multi-layered security measures aimed at ensuring safe, efficient and well-coordinated border management during the high-traffic festive period. Commissioner Masiapato is conducting walkabouts and inspecting operationally vulnerable areas to assess readiness levels as well as engage deployed personnel and cross-border partners. The operation will also be carried out at Maseru Border Post Bridge and Libombo during peak holiday times. And finally, the Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro has accused the United States of trying to turn his country into a colony. Maduro's comments come a day after U.S. President Donald Trump announced a blockade on sanctioned oil tankers, saying Venezuela was now surrounded by U.S. military forces. In a defiant address, Maduro said attempts at regime change would fail.
The intention is to bring about a regime change in Venezuela to impose a puppet government that wouldn't last even 47 hours. A government that would hand over the constitution, sovereignty, and all the country's wealth, turning Venezuela into a colony. This will never happen. Venezuela will never be a colony.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulo Wepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, today marks 3 days to go to the start of the Africa Cup of Nations tournament, while South Africa are in danger of losing the T20 series against India. I'll have details of these and other stories at 12:30.
This is Africa Update, your pulse to the continent. Stories shaping nations and voices driving change. Stay informed, stay connected, right here on Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
It is 12:05 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa on DSTV's audio bouquet channel 802, on OpenView channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as on the SABC Plus app, available on the Apple and Google Play stores.
Africa Update, your daily dose of African insights with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Coming up in this hour.
I don't know if this permission was given, what are the conditions, but if permission was given, it's a bit unfortunate.
South Africa's Department of International Relations and Cooperation has initiated formal diplomatic engagements with both the United States and Kenya.
One loaf of bread, one stitched dress, one determined woman at a time.
And women in Port Sudan are finding ways to rebuild their lives.
Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za.
Join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406 9126 hashtag Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Today on hashtag Africa Update, as Sudan's war continues to uproot millions, women in Port Sudan are finding ways to endure and to lead. Now, displaced from their homes, many are rebuilding their livelihoods through small businesses and community networks, sustaining families and uncertainty. Our question to you today is, do you believe enough is being done to assist the women in Africa? Share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406 9126 hashtag Africa Update us.
As 2025 draws to a close, we pause to honor the spirits that connect us. The festive season reminds us of what truly matters: family, community, and unity. No matter where you gather or reflect, Channel Africa is with you. Bring you stories and voices that are shaped by the African perspective.
Something significant happened on this day. Asanda, you were a baby, I'm sure. I'm not even sure if you were born. No, you were. You were a baby, yeah.
Yoga. Matseko is still trying to convince me and flip me over.
I've done that already, and you're going to come now on the journey.
I will try.
From all of us to all of you, may your season be safe and peaceful. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
South Africa's Department of International Relations and Cooperation has initiated formal diplomatic engagements with both the United States and Kenya to resolve the matter of 7 Kenyans who abused the tourist visas. Home Affairs says they violated the South African immigration laws. International relations expert and former ambassador Dr. Kingsley Makubele weighs in on this.
The Vienna Convention spells out diplomatic function. And in Article 3, it defines about 5 diplomatic functions. And if you look at this function, they are called diplomatic functions of the mission. Now, the mission are clearly defined. Now, I have seen in the past protests from the U.S., for instance, there was supposed to be some military activities where they were supposed to send their military. They couldn't do that, because the U.S. was arguing that they were not giving diplomatic immunities. Now, diplomatic immunities are not given willy-nilly. It's something that you consider very seriously before you extend. And that's one thing that I think we've created unnecessary precedent. If you carry a diplomatic passport and you are not an accredited diplomat, you don't have immunities and privileges. But usually states would extend some level of courtesies for diplomatic passport, not immunities. Now, in this instance, there are things that are not clear, because sometimes, I think early this year, there were reports that the United States is considering sending Kenyans to come and process the Afrikaners here. I don't know. And they said they were in discussion with the Department of International Relations and Cooperation. I don't know if this permission was given, what are the conditions. But if permission was given, it's a bit unfortunate. Now, if you read the statement that was published and attributed to Tommy Piggott, who is the deputy spokesperson at the State Department, he really provides some warnings to South Africa that are very concerning. I mean, one of the things that he says is that they can't comment in details about the incident until they have details. But he then goes on to say they expect cooperation and accountability from the South African government, a big problem. Then he goes on to say that they find it unacceptable that South Africa interferes with their refugee operation. Now, do we have a refugee operation in this country that the United States can willingly set up? That's a huge challenge. If they were given permission, it's something else. But there's nothing called a refugee operation in terms of the function of diplomatic missions. So that's where the huge challenge is. And those are the issues that I think with time we'll get much better clarity and details about this matter.
That was international relations expert and former ambassador Dr. Kingsley Makubele.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
Our preparations are underway in the Central African Republic for the general elections to be held on the 28th of December. Our sensitive electoral materials have arrived in the country and were officially handed over by the Deputy Special Representative of the UN Secretary-General and Humanitarian Coordinator, Mohamed Ag Ayoya, to the President of the National Elections Authority, Matthias Barthélemy Moruaba. The head of the National Elections Authority has reassured the public that materials would be deployed nationwide in time for the vote. To discuss this and other stories that have made news across Central Africa is political scientist Cletus Sufri. Cletus, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good afternoon, and I'm happy to be here once again.
Now, Cletus, how important are these elections for the Central African Republic?
Well, this election is very important in the Central African Republic because it is one of those that have come in after a long 4 to 8 years of conflict between the people of the Central African Republic. So we are looking forward in an election where we have more than 15 political parties that are taking part together with the incumbent president, Faustin Archange Touadera. He's been there since 2016, and he's taking the third term, representing the Union for the Progress and Renewal, the URCA. And you've got opposition coalitions that include also the former president, you must note, President Francois Bozizi Kwakwa, and also one of the leading candidates in the URCA party, Ancien George Dugra, and many others. So this is the first time in a while where in Central Africa we have some form of democracy amidst the instability, amidst the turmoil and rebel groups and many other fragile issues that is a challenge to the government.
Now, what are some of the issues that are plaguing the CAR, especially around these elections?
Well, there are key issues that we must note during this time of the elections because you have the issue of security threats, the CPC remnants. Remember, CPC remnants in post-2021 under the Lord's Resistance Army disrupted the elections at the last time where you had clashes with over 50,000 people displaced. You had political manipulations. You have the issue of human rights violations, where the last time we checked under the World Bank 2025 statistics, 45% of the poverty level between the Christians and the Muslims, and you have also the religious conflict. So all of this fuels the instability within the Central African Republic. There's been issues of migration into Cameroon, into Chad, into the DRC, with the issues of ethnic cleansing. There have been issues of, voter manipulation, and it comes to beg, and of course, it goes without saying that there is a high level of insecurity that still looms, and these elections, probably they can be just a show, since there's a lot of instability, there's a lot of religious conflict, and stuff like that. So personally, I don't think these elections will be free and fair with all these challenges.
And what are the main drivers of political instability in the Central African Republic today?
Yeah, you remember that the Central African Republic, like most of the countries in Central Africa, the case of Chad, the case of Burkina Faso, the case of Cameroon, the case of Gabon, there have always been the military that intervenes within the political democracy of this state. And secondly, you've got religious violence where the Christians fight against the Muslims. The typical case is the one in Nigeria, for example, West Africa. You have the Boko Haram doing what it's doing, and you have the Christians and the Muslims were killing Christians, and even President Donald Trump and the United States intervened. That is the same thing that is happening in Central Africa, where the French were kicked out and replaced by the Russians. So the government now is working with the Russians to be able to quell some of the violence. It is unfortunate because the people in the opposition, they either take the lines or either Christians or against the incumbent who may be a Muslim. So issues of religious violence is one of the towering challenges within the Central African Republic. And not to forget, voter apathy. We are looking at a country where less than 25% have even registered to vote. And people are in the migrant camps all over the area, internally displaced and externally displaced. So the elections, per se, are just a show But if you want to look at the integrity of this coming on December 28th, I think the fragile nature of the country does not even permit for free and fair elections.
Now, Cletus, let's just look at how effective regional bodies are, such as ECOWAS, in promoting peace and cooperation. What influence do external actors, looking at countries like France, China, Russia, and the US have in Central Africa, I beg your pardon?
Yeah, you have to understand that with the presence of different international bodies and states, they come in not just to see that Central Africa is very stable, but they come in for their own terms and conditions. They come in with their own agenda to exploit the people. ECOWAS, which is supposed to be a strong body that makes sure that there's peace and stability within the Central African region, but it is a sham of itself because they do not have a military. They do not have a strong judiciary or any criminal court to be able to judge the incumbent who is running for the third term, who says the Constitution to run for the third term, instead of the 2 terms as were it before Central Africa fell into chaos. So the presence of the IMO, the presence of ECO, of CEMAC, the presence of the European Union, the presence of even ECO was trying to intervene in bringing peace, because the Central African Republic is a very strategic region that binds both the West and the Central Africa in that order. So you realize that within this dispensation, China has its own ambitions in supplying the European Union that is supplying some of the ballot boxes, the IMF that is pumping money into the elections. All of these international bodies, multinational bodies, and European regional bodies do not have the interest of the Central African citizens at heart. They are coming in to do what they have to do and to get what they have to get. And
well, Cletus, a big challenge across the African continent. But unfortunately, we have run out of time and are going to leave it here for today. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update, and we wish you all the best during this festive season. That was a political scientist, Cletus Sufri, joining us on the line. It is 20 after 12 Central African time.
Be inspired. Stay informed. Channel Africa, the beauty of life. Now available anytime, anywhere with our new app. The Morning Switch Weekend with the Shy Guy.
There's a Ugandan lawmaker. His name is Atkins Katusabe, who speaks with an American accent in Parliament. So the parliamentarians have complained that we don't understand what you are saying.
Listen to him. Come on.
Mr. Speaker, I think this is a disaster that could cause an extinction of our entire community.
Going to procedure?
Mr. Speaker, the English that is trying to put this matter here is confusing a number of us and making us miss a serious issue. It needs to speak the common English of Uganda. The English is too much.
Need a piece of paper so that we'll be able to read. The English is too much. I picture him saying order, out of order.
Saturday and Sunday mornings belong to the Morning Switch. 3 to 6 a.m. Central African Time. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo. 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
The festive season can be enjoyable but challenging for people living with diabetes due to changes in diet, routine and activity. And while it is important to enjoy the holidays, it is just as vital to keep blood sugars under control. And to unpack this for us, we are joined on the line by Alexandra van Esch, a diabetes counsellor with Diabetes UK, diabetes advocate and a board member of the SA Diabetes Alliance. Alexandra, good afternoon and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good morning, Lulu. I'm very happy to be with you and your listeners.
Now, how does your daily routine usually change during the festive season, including sleep, travel and activity levels?
Yes, so the principle of managing your diabetes over the festive season is to try and maintain your usual routine. But as we know, the holiday period, the festive period, often disrupts a standard routine. And that routine is basically what and when you eat, what and when you inject. If you have type 1 diabetes or your oral medication with type 2 diabetes, exercise is part of it. And the holiday period can often just disrupt this routine, which therefore makes the blood sugar unstable, and then you get the high blood sugars and the low blood sugars. So it's a very challenging time for people with diabetes, but there are ways to manage it and ways to get through it and have fun at the same time.
Does the festive season cause stress or anxiety about diabetes?
It does, Lulu, because as we all know, food is a very central part of diabetes management. What we eat as people living with diabetes, which I do myself, food is central to our diabetes control. But we all know that over the festive period, we have so many foods, so many different foods, richer foods, sweeter foods, an abundance of food. Normally, it's a daily meal and it's a lunch and supper, but over the festive season, it's almost like the food doesn't stop. And that makes it extremely challenging for people with diabetes.
And because the food doesn't stop, everyone is always has something in their mouths. How and in what way can you explain your diabetes needs to others? And which festive foods are hardest to manage?
I think the principle of how you manage your diabetes during the year applies to the festive season as well. So people with diabetes, we're looking out for the carbohydrate foods, which increase the blood sugar very quickly. The proteins take up to 4 hours to increase the blood sugar. The fat foods with the fats take up to 8 hours to increase the blood sugar. Carbohydrates will increase the sugar within 30 minutes to 1 hour. So therefore, the high carbohydrate foods that we have during the festive period, they make it challenging for people with diabetes because, it's a balancing of you don't want to deprive yourself, and you also want to enjoy yourself, but you also want to keep your blood sugar stable. And sorry, to answer your question, I think it's important for people with diabetes to share their needs with someone that's going to be with them over the festive period, to share their needs and then ask them for support, especially when it comes to just making sure your blood sugar isn't going too high or too low. And also asking for some emotional support, because what I've said, I do coach people with diabetes. What I say is, you're out of routine, enjoy that little bit of pudding. I'm not saying do it all year round, but I'm saying have a bit, really enjoy it, but don't go back for more and more. If other people are doing that, that's their business, but have that, enjoy it. Inject accurately for it if you live with type 1 diabetes, and have it as a treat. You don't do it all year round, but you don't want to sit there feeling deprived and unhappy. So it's a careful balance to choose to enjoy a richer food, but it's about injecting accurately for that food that is out of the ordinary.
And alcohol. Alcohol plays a big role during the season. How does one manage it with their diabetes?
Yes, so something that's very important that I say is that we need to stay hydrated. People with diabetes and everybody, we need to stay hydrated, and we need to stay hydrated with water. We can have some other drinks. People with diabetes should not be drinking sweet fruit juices and sodas and things like that. They can have the diet Sprites and things like that. But being hydrated is a very, very important part of it, especially when it comes to alcohol. Because what you don't want, if you don't want to be drinking alcohol to quench your thirst, you want to be drinking alcohol for that bit of enjoyment. It certainly gives us, makes us a bit more relaxed and all that kind of thing. But you don't want to be drinking alcohol just to quench your thirst. The other thing to be aware of is that a dry alcohol, a dry wine, your whiskeys, your spirits, your brandies, they will lower your blood glucose. But your drinks which are sweeter, and there's so many different varieties of different alcohols which are also sweet. They're practically making alcohol drinks almost like cool drinks. So once you're having the sweeter alcohols, then you're going to have, I can only say, a very difficult time with your blood sugar. So my recommendation is to say enjoy some dry alcohol, avoid the sweeter alcohols, but be very, very careful because alcohol does lower the blood sugar.
And what are some support and goals needed during this festive seasons?
I think for me it's about saying I live with diabetes, I accept it, I do my best to manage it all year round. And it is a festive season. I'm going to join in. I'm going to have fun. I'm going to enjoy a few tasty, different foods that I don't normally eat. But I'm going to make sure it's also a time that I care for myself. And caring for myself is part of that. Is just saying, well, I'd like to have a lot more of that particular tasty dish, but actually I'm going to have a bit, but I'm also going to care for myself, so that my blood sugars can be as stable as I can over the festive period.
Alexandra, thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update. We are going to leave it here for today, and we wish you all the best during this festive season. That's Alexandra van Etch, diabetes counsellor with Diabetes UK, diabetes advocate and a board member of the SA Diabetes Alliance, joining us on the line. Our news up next.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Lulu. Good afternoon. Making headlines. Several heads of state and government from the SADC region have now considered a report of a fact-finding mission to Madagascar. The one-day SADC Extraordinary Summit ended yesterday with the deployment of the Panel of Elders and Mediation Reference Group to Madagascar to help find a solution. Widespread power outages have been reported in the biggest Sudanese cities, Khartoum and Port Sudan, after drone strikes hit a power station, and the Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro has accused the United States of trying to turn his country into a colony. I will have details on these and other stories at 1 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective. Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And a very good afternoon from the sports desk. I am Musibudi Makura with the latest sports news at the Sawa. We'll start with football news. So Zambian captain Marvelous Nkamba has preached a message of support as the side jetted off to Morocco for the AFCON tournament later on this month. It's been a turbulent few weeks for the Warriors, having initially sealed qualification for the continental competition, but then failed in their attempt to secure a top spot for the FIFA World Cup in the Americas next year. The coach of the side, former coach, should I say, Michael Nies, was then sacked, replaced by Mario Marineka early last month, but Nkamba believes they are ready for North Africa.
That's the main focus also for us as football players. We're going there to compete, so I think we just have to believe in ourselves, to give everything, with the support also from you guys back home. I think you've been fantastic supporting the team, so now it's up to the players to push each other and fight for the badge, fight for the flag of the country.
Nkamba also admits that their Group B opener against the Pharaohs of Egypt will set the tone for the rest of the competition, where they are seen as the underdogs.
Yeah, of course. I think football is about competition. I think each and every group is tough. Of course, we're playing against Egypt's first match, Angola and USA. But I think we just have to focus on ourselves, to have a great game plan and to push each other and fight for the country.
On to some cricket news now. South Africa's hopes of winning the 5-match T20 series against India were cut short by the conditions on Wednesday, with the fourth game being called off in Lucknow without a ball bowled. In a rare occurrence, the game did not rather take place due to the weather, but rather due to the smog, which prevented the game from going ahead. So match officials did all the work, with the umpires also having to walk on to the pitch 6 times to assess the conditions before they eventually abandoned the game nearly 2.5 hours after it was scheduled to start. Athletics Kenya President Jackson Tuwe has welcomed a new UN resolution that aims to integrate environmental responsibility into sports worldwide. The resolution, which advocates for using sport as a platform for environmental advocacy, was adopted by the UN Environmental Assembly in Nairobi. Now, the 7th session of the UNEA concluded, approving 11 of the 15 proposed draft resolutions. Kenya played a key role, successfully championing 3 motions and also including the landmark proposal to leverage sport for environmental awareness as well as climate action. Tuwe says the goal now is to foster a culture of environmental responsibility within sports and also inspiring a worldwide movement towards sustainability. And finally, Iga Swiatek will be chasing a career Grand Slam when she begins her 2026 Australian Open campaign in Melbourne next month. Now, the world number 2 has already cemented her place as a tennis great and is now arguably the leading WTA player of her era so far, with 125 weeks of the world number 1, as well as 6 Grand Slam singles titles to her name. The Pole is best known for her 4 French Open triumphs, though she was also the champion at the 2022 US Open, as well as in Wimbledon earlier this year. The Australian Open is the sole slam that the 24-year-old has yet to win, and having sealed her first Wimbledon title this season, she will now compete to complete a career Grand Slam in Melbourne for the first time in January of 2026. And that concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, call us. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news with the Upside team in the next hour. With Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
A very good afternoon. Gabon is planning to introduce a new housing tax in January to finance the Central African oil-producing country's needs as its debt continues to rise. The country is facing an acute squeeze on liquidity that has left it increasingly reliant on regional capital markets. Special Advisor Mary Noella Adameyo says authorities are working on a tax that will be paid monthly by an owner of a dwelling or a tenant. Mayo adds that Gabon's treasury will use the funds to improve public lighting, road maintenance and city cleanliness. Uganda's export earnings nearly doubled in October from the same period last year, driven by a surge in revenue from commodities such as coffee, cocoa and gold. A report from the Finance Ministry shows that Uganda's merchant goods export earnings rose to $1.5 billion in October from $769.6 million in the same month in 2024. Uganda is Africa's largest exporter of coffee, and its earnings from the crop have been surging in recent months, boosted by high global prices. Guinea's Simandou mega mining project is laying off thousands of workers just as it begins exporting iron ore after decades of delays and corruption scandals. The project was officially launched in November ahead of elections on the 28th of December, the first since the military coup in 2021 that brought Mamadi Doumbouya to power. Chandugo Legege has more.
The junta leader is standing for president, and political analysts say he is the favorite to win, meaning he could be in power for another 7 years. Even without Simandou, the world's largest untapped reserve of iron ore, Guinea is the world's biggest exporter of bauxite used to make aluminium. Its mining wealth, however, has failed to transform the lives of citizens. World data published in 2025 show that more than half of the population lives in poverty.
In 2025, Ethiopia have emerged as one of the fastest growing economies in sub-Saharan Africa. After years of conflict, debt distress and foreign currency shortages, the government has pushed ahead with wide-ranging economic reforms aimed at restoring investor confidence. This year has seen renewed engagement with international lenders, a push to liberalize key sectors such as telecoms and finance. Founder and Chief Executive Officer at Pragma Investment Advisor, Merid Fikirihonis, says this year Ethiopia achieved milestones.
Since July 2024, we announced the IMF package program, and then the country has been undertaking a huge macroeconomic reform in all fronts in terms of restructuring its debt, both foreign debt, and then at the same time restructuring the domestic debt, floating its currency, and since floating of its currency, then establishing a new monetary policy.
Warner Brothers has rejected Paramount's $108 billion hostile bid for the entirety of its business. In a letter to shareholders, the board said the bid lacked adequate financing assurances. Warner Bros. Said it was instead sticking to an agreed merger with the streaming giant Netflix. Netflix's offer of $82.7 billion for the Warner TV and film studios, its catalogue and HBO Max streaming was accepted earlier this month. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 453. In Botswana, it's at 13 pula 8. Kenya, 128 shilling 3. And Zambia, 22 kwacha 93. The BRICS countries in Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 ruble 50. Russia, 80 rubles 1. India, 90 rupees 47. China, 7 yuan 3. And in South Africa, the dollar will cost you 16 rand 77 cents. $1 is trading at 75 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Commodities markets, gold is trading at $4,324, while platinum is at $1,936 per ounce. Brent crude oil is at $59.97 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Channel Africa sends you joy and good energy. This festive season, share your memories on our socials. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Channel Africa 1. Your window to the continent and beyond. Africa Update. Only on Channel Africa. Channel Africa. The African perspective.
It is 12:43 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. Our Southern African Development Community Chairperson-elect President Cyril Ramaphosa has welcomed what he described as constructive and outcomes-driven deliberations during an extraordinary virtual SADC Leaders Summit on the situation in Madagascar on Wednesday. Addressing the closing session, Ramaphosa said the regional bloc has agreed to deploy a panel of elders and a mediation reference group to help restore stability in the island nation, following months of political turmoil that saw Madagascar withdraw from its regional responsibilities. Channel Africa's reporter Michael Mbewe has more.
Convened by SADC chairperson Cyril Ramaphosa of the Republic of South Africa, the summit was taking place under the theme Advancing Industrialization, Agricultural Transformation and Energy Transition for a Resilient SADC to consider the fact-finding mission report on the political situation in the Republic of Madagascar and the appointment of incoming chairperson of SADC. The report was tabled by SADC's Organ on Politics, Defense and Security Cooperation chairperson, Arthur Peter Mutharika, President of the Republic of Malawi. In his closing statement, Ramaphosa shed light on the outcomes of the meeting, praising its robustness.
Our deliberations on the developments in the Republic of Madagascar have been substantive, detailed, constructive, and most importantly, outcomes-based. The decision we have taken to deploy a panel of elders and mediation reference group to Madagascar evidences and demonstrates our collective commitment to a peaceful and stable region here in Southern Africa. The mission will engage with all stakeholders in Madagascar to ensure there is an inclusive process leading up to the holding of fair and credible elections.
He said SADC leaders have urged Madagascar's transitional authorities to begin an inclusive, nationally driven dialogue to pave the way for fresh elections and lasting stability in the country. The summit also called for the peaceful return of political exiles, stressing that their participation is essential to building national consensus ahead of new elections.
As SADC, we urge the transitional government to initiate a Malagasy-owned and led inclusive national dialogue during the transitional period so that it can pave the way for fresh elections and facilitate the peaceful return of political exiles so that they too can participate in this national dialogue that should be owned, managed, and given direction by the people of Madagascar themselves. We further call on the transitional government to ensure that the reform processes that need to be embarked upon are timely, that they are inclusive of all stakeholders, and that they should create a conducive environment in which all the people of Madagascar can contribute meaningfully to the dialogue. This must be a Madagascar-owned and led dialogue, for it is the people of Madagascar who must find their own solutions to the challenges that they face.
Additionally, he said SADC leaders were also pleased with the return of calm in Madagascar, noting positive progress in national consultations launched by the transitional government, while urging citizens to embrace peace, unity and reconciliation as the country moves toward the establishment of an elected government.
We welcome the restoration of calm in Madagascar and have noted that the national consultative processes launched by the transitional government on the 10th of December have proceeded well. As SADC, we reaffirm our commitment to continue and to remain engaged with the political and security situation in the Republic of Madagascar until an elected government is established through an electoral process. We call on the people of Madagascar to take this opportunity to deeply reflect on the challenges facing their country and choose the path of peace, unity, reconciliation, and development.
SADC Executive Secretary Elias Mahosi confirmed the institution of SADC's panel of elders comprising of former leaders led by Malawi's former President Joyce Banda to be part of the mediation process.
Summit approved the deployment of the SADC panel of elders by March 2026, led by Dr. Joyce Banda, former President of the Republic of Malawi, together with the mediation reference group. supported by the Secretariat to facilitate and support the ongoing processes of restoration of political stability, democracy and peace in the Republic of Madagascar.
Mahosi says regional leaders have directed the panel of elders to consult former Mozambican President Joaquim Chissano, drawing on his experience as SADC's special envoy to Madagascar to guide ongoing mediation efforts.
Sami directed the SADC panel of elders to engage His Excellency Dr. Joaquim Chissano, former President of Mozambique and SADC special envoy to Madagascar, to provide contextual background on previous interventions and outstanding issues, focusing on constitutional reforms, electoral processes, and the rule of law in line with the SADC Treaty.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
Well, join us in conversation on our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763. That's 406-9126. Hashtag Africa Update. Let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, today on Hashtag Africa Updates asks, as Sudan's war continues to uproot millions, women in Port Sudan are finding ways to endure and to lead. Displaced from their homes, and many are rebuilding livelihoods through small businesses and community networks, sustaining families and amid uncertainty. Our question to you is, what do you believe when do you believe enough is being done to assist the women in Africa? Share your thoughts and your views on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 as 406-9126. Hashtag Africa Update Us.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo on Channel Africa.
As Sudan's war continues to uproot millions, women in Port Sudan are finding ways to endure and to lead. Displaced from their homes, many are rebuilding livelihoods through small businesses and community networks, sustaining families amid uncertainty. This is a story of resilience, quietly reshaping daily life away from the front lines. Naba Mohidian reports from Port Sudan.
In a quiet corner of Port Sudan, as the city absorbs waves of displaced people, resilience is taking shape. One loaf of bread, one stitched dress, one determined woman at a time. At the center of this story is Namarik Ismail, forced to flee her home by war. Namarik now starts her mornings here, at a small women-run shop where survival has turned in purpose. She's not alone. Across Port Sudan, thousands of displaced women are rebuilding life from almost nothing, sustaining families through bakeries, tailoring cooperatives, and small street businesses, often while carrying the weight of loss, uncertainty, and responsibility.
I'm originally from White Nile State. When the war began, I was displaced to Madani in central Sudan. I started rebuilding my business there. But when the fighting reached Madani, I had to flee again, this time to Port Sudan. I chose not to dwell in what we lost, but to start over. As women, whether we are mothers, sisters, daughters, or wives, we carry a responsibility. In times like these, our families depend on us.
For many women, these small businesses are more than income. They are lifelines. They pay for food, rent, and school supplies, while restoring a sense of dignity and control in lives disrupted by conflict. Behind the scenes, local organizations are helping turn determination into stability, offering skills training, seed funding, and safe spaces for women to work and support one another.
These fairs aren't about making profit. I created them to give women a chance to stand on their feet again and support themselves and their families. I'm also a displaced woman from Khartoum, so I understand what it's like to lose everything and arrive in a new city as a stranger, forced to rebuild life from nothing. That's why supporting one another matters.
In neighborhoods stretched by displacement, women are also holding communities together, forming mutual aid groups, caring for children, and ensuring education continues despite limited resources. Beyond the headlines of war, these acts of resilience are rarely seen, but in Port Sudan, women like Namarik are quietly rebuilding hope, not waiting for peace to arrive, but creating it themselves, one small step at a time. Naba Muhiddin, Port Sudan.
Africa Update on Channel Africa.
South Africa's lower house of parliament, the National Council of Provinces, has passed the Immigration Amendment Bill, marking a significant step in bringing South Africa's immigration laws into compliance with constitutional court judgments, while a national debate over illegal immigration, access to education and healthcare, and the future of migration policy has intensified. Dimakaso Lishoro has the details.
The bill amends the Immigration Act of 2002 and responds directly to a constitutional court ruling that found aspects of the arrest and detention of undocumented migrants unconstitutional. Central to the amendment is a requirement that any person detained for purposes of deportation must be brought before a court within 48 hours. Presenting the Select Committee on Security and Justice report, Chairperson Jane Mananiso says the bill seeks to restore constitutional balance.
The current Immigration Amendment Bill seeks to amend the Immigration Act 2002 in line with the Constitutional Court judgment to revise provisions relating to arrest and detention of illegal foreigners for purposes of deportation and to align these provisions in constitutional principles.
She explained that the bill introduces an interest of justice test to guide courts and immigration officials when deciding on further detention.
Honourable members, the bill should be seen in the broader process of the review of the White Paper of Citizens, Immigration and Refugee Action. The committee is of the view that the bill strengthens judicial oversight and the rule of law and complies with the constitutional court orders.
Illegal migration has intensified South Africa's struggle over scarce resources, with communities citing pressure on jobs, housing, education and healthcare. Government has now introduced sweeping immigration reforms that aim to modernize South Africa's refugee, citizenship, immigration and civil registration systems. They introduced the first safe country principle and regional burden sharing for refugees, as well as a point-based system for economic pathways to citizenship. With 60 votes in support and 5 against, political parties in the NCOP adopted the Immigration Amendment Bill, situating it within South Africa's constitutional and global migration context. Representing the ANC, advocate Inkosi Muele Nonkonyana says South Africa is burdened by illegal migration and the negative impact on the socio-economic fabric of the country.
We are dealing with migration not in the context of denying people the opportunity to visit our country, but to do so in the parameters of the law.
Nzamo Bili from the Democratic Alliance described the bill as constitutionally unavoidable.
The bill restores lawfulness, certainty, and oversight to immigration enforcement. It strengthens the judicial review, affirms the rights of detainees to appear before a court, and introduces a clear interest of justice standards to guide detention decisions. In doing so, it reinforces the rule of law while preserving the authority of states to manage its borders. But Chairperson, importantly, this also shows that human dignity and effective law enforcement are not opposites. A system that respects rights is also a system that is stronger, more credible, and more enforceable.
The economic freedom fighters also supported the bill but criticized government failures in border control. Makuduele Mampuru speaks on behalf of the EFF.
Immigrants
immigrants, whether legal or illegal, have a right to appear before the court of law and the right to be represented by a lawyer before these courts. The challenges of illegal immigration into South Africa have been in the making for years. This because the ANC government have failed to secure our borders. The Border Management Agency, which was created recently, is underfunded and does not have adequate resources to discharge their task.
The Umkhonto weSizwe Party's Sibonele Majola argued that the amendment was reactive rather than transformative. The party has not supported the bill. The MKP added that systematic failures at Home Affairs continue to drive undocumented migration.
These were the consequences of the lawyers of the human rights in Home Affairs. Without this ruling, Madam Chair, the abuse of detection power would have continued unchecked.
Meanwhile, the Inkatha Freedom Party reiterated its firm stance on illegal migration.
When it comes to illegal immigrants that are in our country, the IFP has been very clear that they need to be deported. And this amendment bill really helps, especially the law enforcement officials, in terms of how they should proceed with regard to illegal immigrants that are in detention.
And finally, the Patriotic Alliance framed immigration as a sovereignty and service delivery issue.
We further emphasize that immigration policy must be aligned with national security, labor market protection, and municipal service capacity.
For Channel Africa News in Johannesburg, I'm Dimakazo Leshoro.
Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
Well, this is how we wrap our show today. It's been a great day. Continue with us on all our social media platforms. That's on X, Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube at Channel Africa 1, on Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also send us your comments and voice notes to +2763 406 9126 #Africa Update, and let us know which country you're in. And if you have any stories that you'd like us to highlight or to focus on, send us an email. It is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or give us a call on +2711 714 4459. Well, it's goodbye, and let's do this again tomorrow on Friday.